Hey guys, what is up? It's Kat here. Thank you so much for coming back and joining us. Today, I say us for the first time because today's video is going to be a little bit different. For today's video, I'm actually going to turn the camera over to Tom, who for the first time, I believe ever on this channel, is going to be taking it away and making this video all by himself. So you won't be hearing from me, but some of you guys are probably already familiar with Tom. He is my fiance, if you don't know, and he helps me run the channel a lot behind the scenes, and he appears every week in our Dork Discourse podcast where we oftentimes debate different Star Wars topics, theories, all of that fun stuff. So if you have tuned into Dork Discourse before, you know that Tom has many great theories up his sleeve, and so today, as we were just getting ready for the day, he kind of shared one with me, and I immediately just said, make a video. You have to just make a video about this. So without further ado, we'll have Tom take it away here.
Hey, how's it going, everybody? My name's Tom. For those of you that do know me from Dork Discourse or elsewhere on Catherine's channel, nice to talk to you again. For those who might be new tuning in or aren't familiar with Catherine's channel or the Dork Discourse podcast, nice to meet you unofficially. So yeah, whether you have seen Dork Discourse or not, whether you know who I am or not, you're here, you clicked on the video, you are interested in Grogu's story. Grogu. Today, specifically this morning, we think the final piece of the puzzle actually came in the last Mando episode, and it led to this revelation moment in the shower this morning. And so spent the whole morning compiling the facts, compiling the story, and that's what the whole point of this video. So starting with the facts, we first meet Grogu in the first episode of Mandalorian Season 1. We're told that he's 50 years old, which puts him the exact same age as Anakin if he were still going to be alive. The next thing we know, after Mando leaves and goes to get the bounty, is in a piece of dialogue between him and Queel that the mercenaries and this target that he's after have been on this planet for some amount of time, but it's still ultimately an unknown amount of time that Grogu ends up being held in that encampment with the mercenaries protecting him. And in Season 2 of Mando, Ahsoka comes into the picture, and in particular, she says that he grew up on the Jedi Temple on Coruscant. During Order 66, Grogu was hidden, someone took him from the temple, and then his memory went dark. So he's hidden, someone took him from the temple, memory goes dark. Very, very, very crucial point to the story that we're going to talk about in a little bit. Then we get Book of Boba Fett, and we get an actual flashback while Grogu's off training with Luke. Luke rejogs some of his memory through the Force. We get an actual flashback that showed 501st Troopers in the Jedi Temple attacking Jedi protectors of Grogu the night of Order 66. But then at the end of that scene, the 501st Troopers actually kill all the Jedi, and it cuts when the 501st Troopers are walking up to Grogu. End scene. Very important. And now we're in the midst of Mandalorian Season 3, and in one of the Mando trailers, the official trailer, we get another scene of Order 66, the night of in the Jedi Temple, and Grogu is yet again being protected by the Jedi. And what's different with the trailer shot versus Book of Boba Fett is that there's a door, and someone or something is cutting down the door, but there has not been any fighting yet, which I think is something that's been overlooked, and it's going to be explained in the story. There's a ton of other information that's been recently brought up in Mando and in Bad Batch that is glue to this whole thing. Starting from what the end goal is, what we know. We know that Palpatine survives because him and his Sith cultists and Imperial remnants have gone to Exegol, and they've created Force-sensitive cloned beings, Snoke and the Palpatine clone himself. And that's how Palpatine has been able to survive. That's what we know. In Mando Season 2, where Mando goes back to Navarro, and Greef and Cara Dune end up going to an Imperial base to try and, clean out the remnants that are there, and the troopers that are still there. What they end up finding is that there's a very Snoke-looking figure that's in a vat. It's very clear, and the intent is made that this is some type of cloning facility. So take a step back even further. In Season 1, when we first find Grogu, Din takes the bounty, he goes to get Grogu, he brings him back, but then he quickly discovers that Dr. Pershing and the Imperial remnants there are trying to extract his DNA. Based on those 3 points that we just went through, it's obvious that the Empire is interested in Grogu for his Force-sensitive properties and trying to make use of his DNA for a higher purpose, which, based on Rise of Skywalker, that higher purpose is ultimately the return of the Emperor. Another aspect that just came up in the most recent episode of The Mandalorian is that Dr. Pershing, in his Opera House Confession on Coruscant, he's basically going into his history and his Imperial research and how he got to where he is today. thanks to the Kaminoans, they were able to make breakthroughs in cloning technology. But then he still goes into some technical details which are crucial to explaining the story. Essentially, you have another donor, you take the DNA of that donor, splice it up, and then you replace sections of the DNA with the host in order to enhance that host. Very, very, very interesting. And then now we go to the Bad Batch. So in the Bad Batch, the end of season 1, we see that Kamino is destroyed. The Empire destroys it. Before they destroy it, they take personnel and scientific knowledge, transfer them to Mount Tantus. Mount Tantus is now housing Nala Se, cloning technology from Kamino, their science and secrets. It's implied that the primary function of Mount Tantus is for cloning, experimentation, and research, and human reconditioning. So then the other aspect that's key is what happened in the last Mando episode at the end of Dr. Pershing's story. And that goes back to the mind wiping. So we know in Bad Batch that Crosshair is getting taken to Mount Tantus for some type of reconditioning effort. We saw in the last episode that he killed an Imperial officer. They don't want to get rid of him, they don't want to kill him, but we're going to change your mind so that you're going to be the cold-blooded killer you used to be. But then back to the Mando episode we just got, Pershing is terrified. He gets set up, it's a trap, he gets taken to this New Republic facility. Mon Calamari doctor that's there is basically saying, no, it's fine, this is Imperial tech, but it's been tested and revamped to actually been used as a mind-soothing technique. It release your anxieties, quell your thoughts. At low voltages, it's completely safe. But Pershing knows the full scope of the technology, which is mind wiped. He directly says, you're going to wipe my mind. You're going to wipe my mind. He's terrified that they're about to erase his memory, and that's part of their reconditioning program. Then ultimately he gets betrayed by Eli Kane. It seems like she has actually wiped his mind, or made the attempt to wipe his mind, in order to protect the Imperial secrets of cloning so that no one catches word, or so it's shoved under the rug, because obviously they're still actively trying to figure out how to get Palpatine back and resurrected. So those are all the facts that we've seen across Mando, Bad Batch, the sequels. Here is the story of how Grogu survives Order 66. Okay, so we start off at the Jedi Temple, the night of Order 66. 501st Troopers are walking up the steps. They begin their raid on the Jedi, killing thousands. The Jedi Order is being decimated. We know that Grogu is there at the temple while the atrocities are being committed. He was moved to a room and protected by a handful of Jedi to prevent him from being a part of the slaughter that was going on. We see that all is quiet. They're in the room. They've locked behind a sealed door, but then someone starts to cut through. Eventually the door blasts open and 501st Troopers come rushing into the room, and they kill all the Jedi protectors, and then all that's left is Grogu there in the room full of 501st Troopers. We're then going to cut to the end of the terror. We see that Order 66 is over in the temple, and Palpatine is going to come and tell Anakin, well done, now go bring peace and order to the galaxy. After Anakin leaves, we then see Palpatine get ushered into the room where Grogu is, where Palpatine instructs the clone troopers to prep Grogu for transportation off-world. So now we cut to the Bad Batch. We know it's likely that Omega is going to be captured, and then she's going to get sent to Mount Tantus. So the Bad Batch are going to plot a rescue mission to Mount Tantus. They figure out how to infiltrate, but then now it's all about needing a distraction in order to get Omega to safety, and then also they can escape the fortress, because Mount Tantus is a fortress. So what they end up doing is unleashing the clone Zillo beasts that are down in the basement. Zillo beasts just cause mass destruction and hysteria. Anyone who's captive is being freed left and right. But what they find is that Omega has been sent to Nala Se's division of experimentation. The Bad Batch, Omega, Nala Se, they go to escape. But at the last moment, Nala Se says, no, I can't leave yet. I have to go save someone. Someone's been put under my watch. I have to go make sure they get out safely. So Nala Se turns back, runs into the darkness. Bad Batch trusts her. They need to get out themselves. So they go ahead and leave and make their escape. But before we cut, the last moment of the episode, it cuts back to Nala Se. She's running around. She goes to a door, opens the door, and then you see Nala Se enter the room, and then Grogu's figure takes the foreground of the camera. End episode. The story of how Nala Se and Grogu escape Mount Tantus would have to be shown in live action. Grogu's story has been in live action the entire time, so they're going to keep that in live action. Ultimately, Nala Se and Grogu somehow escape. Nala Se vows to protect him. She has a compassion for him, just like she has a compassion for Omega. She knows Omega is in safe hands with the Bad Batch, but in that moment of desperation, she is fearful of Grogu's future. She thinks that, without her, without anyone protecting him, he's hopeless. So she puts herself on the line, gets him out of Mount Tantus, gets him to safety, but quickly realizes that she can't protect him alone, and that he's better off under the protection of someone else. 25 years later, that protection turns into a group of mercenaries on a desert planet. I think the story in between there is incredibly interesting. We're going to get it at some point. It's going to be in live action, but ultimately Nala Se saves Grogu from the time he spent on Mount Tantus of testing and losing his mind, and spared him of that. And then it's a long 25 years before he's finally liberated from the watchful guise of paid protectors. So that's ultimately the story. That's what I think is going to happen. I think that based on what we've been given, the facts are solid. I think the facts back it all up. The biggest concerns are, why is Palpatine going to the temple? But in Revenge of the Sith, we see the hologram of him from the Jedi Temple security archives of him at the temple after Anakin's finished killing everybody. And he says, well done, now go and bring peace and justice to the Empire, which basically means go to Mustafar and kill the Separatists. We know he's there, just like we got with Clone Wars Season 7. Dave Filoni masterfully intertwined the animation, what was going on versus what was going on in live action Revenge of the Sith at the same time. Seamless transition. He's going to do again in this case, and we're going to get another seamless transition of the live action hologram that Obi-Wan's looking at in the security archives, and then Anakin leaving, and then Palpatine going to address Grogu, give the order to have him sent off off-world, but ultimately that means Mount Tantus. And then it proves why the Empire's so bloodthirsty for Grogu, even 25 years later. At this point in the timeline, Palpatine's dead. He's been dead for 5 years, so cloning has jumped to the top of their priority list to try and recover their Emperor, to try and bring him back. They know Grogu's still out there. They know he escaped Mount Tantus. They know he's still alive, and they are searching for him, and they found him. So that's why this bounty is so important that Din gets sent on, because in their mind, Grogu is incredibly force sensitive. Obviously, he's the same species as Yoda. If Palpatine himself wanted Grogu to be sent to Mount Tantus, it explains why they are so sought after bringing Grogu back and capturing him, so that they continue to do more tests and continue to do more DNA extraction and research. Everybody take the time to digest it. Some of you might hate it, some of you might love it. In my mind, there's way more pros than cons. There's way more strengths and facts that back up the story than weaknesses or flaws. But obviously there are going to be weaknesses and flaws until we find out what actually happens in the show. But until we find out, we're going to do another Dork Discourse episode probably next Monday to kind of go through the theory. Definitely curious to see what everybody else has to say. We're just going to rifle through the pros and cons and see what we come up with. Maybe there's other alternatives that we didn't think of, but as of now, the story that we just laid out is pretty solid in my opinion. Thanks everybody for listening. Hope you enjoyed it. Talk to you soon.
Thank you guys as always so much for watching, and definitely a shout out to Tom in the comments, and let him know if you guys want to see more just solo videos from him. Again, he does so much behind the scenes. He is truly the other half of this channel. You guys just don't get to see him that often unless you tune into Dork Discourse every week, but definitely let us know down below if you would like Tom to film more videos on his own. I'm sure he has plenty of other theories that he would love to share with you guys. So if that's something you would like to see more of, let him know. He likes to be mysterious around here, but I know he's a fan favorite with you guys. So give him a shout out, and do let us know if you would like to be seeing more solo videos from him in the future. Thank you guys again so much for watching. Don't forget, check us out on the Dork Discourse podcast, which happens every single week. May the force be with you guys always, and we will see you guys again very soon. Bye guys.